Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a science fiction action film, The Tomorrow War. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The 2022 World Cup soccer match has gone to heat with 3 minutes of extra time. As the Brazilian player has a one-shot chance, all Brazilian fans in the stands and in front of the television are waiting for the score. Unexpectedly, the match is interrupted by a group of armed soldiers from 2051. They appear on the soccer field in a burst of light and smoke, and announce that 30 years into the future, the planet Earth is invaded by an alien race, called the White Spikes. These are voracious and brutal creatures, whose only motivation is to destroy all life around them. To balance the scales, the future soldiers have traveled to ask the present planet for help. In response, nations work together to save humanity, building time travel facilities, and recruiting soldiers to fight the future war. Unfortunately, many batches of military forces have been sent to the future for duty, but most of them lost their lives in the battle, and only very few managed to come back. Eventually, a world draft begins, and groups of ordinary men and veterans are called forth for the mission. Among those reluctantly recruited is Dan, a veteran of the Iraq War. Dan reports to the military base, where he is fitted with a tracking device that will assist him in returning if he is still alive after a week. Meanwhile, he learns from his certificate of death that only those who have already died before the war starts are enlisted, and he will die in an accident in 2028. Dan returns home to bid farewell to his beloved daughter and wife before leaving for the mission. Shortly after, Dan is thrown in with a group of fellow recruits for basic training. As most of the recruits are civilians who can't use guns, Dan realizes that the trip is doomed. Later, they travel to the future by use of the jump link technology, which is still in beta mode. Because of that, before they even face those threatening creatures though, most of the people do not survive the drop high above the city. Dan and some lucky ones escape death, as they land in a high-rise rooftop swimming pool. There, they are astonished to see the future city is reduced to burning rubbles, with collapsed buildings, the wreckage of helicopters, and corpses scattered all over the place. The survivors are contacted by Colonel, a science whiz and a commanding officer of the resistance. Colonel appoints Dan as the temporary captain, as he had led operations in Iraq War before. Since the authorities decide to blast the whole city overwhelmed by the beasts, Dan's unit is deployed to rescue a nearby lab before the sterilization. The lab scientists developed a toxin, which is believed to be able to wipe out White Spikes. Previous troops sent are trapped by the White Spikes. Since Dan has fought and survived war, the unit follows his instructions with faith. When they reach the destination, they find the stranded troops and scientists have all died. Countless spikes on the wall stare at them, as they make their entrance to the lab. In fact, those are spiky bullets, shot by the tentacles of the White Spikes. The name White Spike is derived from its ashy complexion and spiky bullets. Given that no one survives the last rescue, Colonel orders Dan to evacuate with the research data and toxin sample. Just as Dan's unit gets what they need and prepare to leave, a White Spike suddenly shows up and kills a female soldier. Dan commands his soldiers to fire at such grotesque and really scary-looking alien creatures, but to no avail. He then orders them to retreat. On their way out, the White Spikes chase after them and devour a few soldiers. To ensure the unit's safety, Dan decides to cover them by going last. A few seconds later, Dan is attacked by a rampaging White Spike. After firing all of his bullets, Dan takes out an axe from the fire hydrant cabinet for melee combat. Although the feeble and weak Dan spares no effort, the vicious tentacled White Spike keeps gaining the upper hand. When he is on the brink of losing his life, Charlie and Dorian come back to rescue him. Charlie fires a volley of shots at the monster. As some bullets hit its belly and neck, the Achilles heel of White Spikes, the alien species falls to the ground. Defeating the White Spike, Dan's unit finally leaves the lab. Unfortunately, more of such horrifying monsters clamoring to eat them alive are waiting outside the lab. In desperation, everyone sprints to the evacuation point. At the pickup point, their car is overturned, and its driver devoured by the monsters. Right at the disappointing moment, Colonel informs Dan that his area will be blasted in 3 minutes, and they should go as soon as possible. The death toll is rising, as they are trying to escape by the skin of their teeth. However, the horde of White Spikes are just too overwhelming. When the safe zone is within reach, some wounded soldiers sacrifice themselves to tackle the beasts, so that rest can safely leave with the toxin. Just when Dan steps into the safe zone, the deafening explosion takes place, knocking him unconscious. He then wakes up in sickbay, with Charlie and Dorian beside him. In this military encampment, Dan extends his appreciation to Colonel, and then learns that Colonel is actually the older version of his daughter. Colonel reveals that he dies in a car accident, but before they can catch up more, they have to execute the next plan. Colonel finds a few female white spike, which breeds the new baby white spikes. She has tested the reagent in the white spike's lair, but only male white spikes die, whereas the females are not affected at all. So Colonel decides to capture one female white spike for further research. According to her plan, Dan's unit is sent to tranquilize and cage the female monster and bring it back by helicopter. Upon arrival at the lair, they follow the given guidelines step by step. Once the female white spike loses its consciousness, the soldiers shoot chains into her body and pull her out of the cave. However, even though a dozen of strong men work together, the monster does not move an inch. Suddenly the female white spike rushes out from its cave with an uproar and prowls on the soldiers without mercy. Due to its swiftness, many soldiers die in an instant. Filled with worries for the soldiers, Colonel descends to the cave to command the battle. But one careless mistake has put herself in the trap of the white spike. Father's love spurs Dan to jump into the hole at once to deal with the white spike's tentacle. When the beast's movement restrained and its strength deteriorated, he directs the rest to pull it out. Finally, the unit manages to cage and load it onto the helicopter. However, the gunfire earlier has brought thousands of white spikes to besiege them. A helicopter that has just taken off is pulled down by the beasts and explodes on the spot. Dan and Colonel flee with a Humvee, firing machine guns at the hordes of monsters on top of the vehicle. Their destination is a military base built on the sea, the last military base left on Earth. With concerted effort, Colonel and her colleagues come up with a scientific solution that can kill the female white spike. However, the smidgen of hope of actually wiping out the enemy shatters as an army of white spikes conquer the base to rescue the trapped one. Under the attack, the base is about to collapse soon. Dan and Colonel hurry to the tarmac while fighting their way out. The day marks the last day of Dan's stay, and he will time travel back soon. When time is so pressing, Colonel is injured by a spiky bullet. With only 5 minutes left before his departure, Dan quickly brings Colonel up and prepares to go. All of a sudden, the once caged female white spike appears before them to seize Colonel and throws her into the sea. To save his daughter, Dan holds onto her hand with all his might and strength. But Colonel lets go of his hand after giving him the toxin solution. Stricken by grief, Dan jumps down into the sea. At the same time, the space tunnel is opened, and Dan is transported back along with Charlie and Dorian. Dan submits the toxin solution to authorities for mass production, and sending them to the future to eradicate the white spikes. Much to his shock, nothing can be sent over to the future, as the jump link technology of the other end is no longer available. In other words, human beings in 30 years' future are defeated and doomed. Knowing this, Dan returns home with a heavy heart. His wife burst into tears of joy to have him back, but Dan is upset thinking of his daughter. That night, Dan shares with his wife what he has gone through during the week of duty, and his resolution to save their daughter. As far as Dan knows, the white spikes first descend on a Russian snow mountain in the year 2048. Strangely, no photo of a spaceship is captured by satellite in that year. This suggests the alien monster might have come to Earth much earlier than the year 2048. With this clue, Dan carries out his investigation. He contacts Charlie and Dorian for help, and realizes Charlie has only a few months to live due to her terminal cancer. Charlie gives Dan a spiky bullet picked up from the future battlefield. By extraction, they discover volcanic ash from the spike, which means the white spikes have been buried deep down the ground. The volcanic ash finally unravels that white spikes have reached the Earth by spaceship hundreds of years ago, as their arrival coincides with a volcanic eruption in northern Russia. They are buried deep underground by volcanic ash and snow. Centuries later, global warming has thawed the ice glaciers in northern Russia, and therefore freed white spikes' shackles. Dan seeks official permission to destroy the white spikes in Russia, but the nation refuses to support such a cause, as no concrete evidence is provided. Moreover, political as Russia and the United States are not on good terms. Dan turns to his estranged father, an ex-PLA, for help. When Grandpa knows that the trip to save his granddaughter, he agrees right away. On top of that, Dan manages to get the toxin solution mass-produced with the help of a female time traveler soldier. She fully supports the drive and offers bombs for the battle. So Dan forms his special force with Grandpa, Charlie, Dorian, and a few surviving future soldiers. Grandpa flies his private jet, dodging the Russian satellite system, all the way to the Academy of Sciences glacier on Komsomolets Island. According to the changes in the magnetic field and heat source, Dan ascertains the location of the alien spaceship. Then, they blast open the ice, and find a cave in which the spacecraft stays. Dan cuts through the spacecraft, and walks in with Charlie, while Grandpa and Dorian are on guard outside. Inside the ship, Dan finds what looks like an alien's body and a white spike incubator. This goes to reveal that white spikes are invading weapons, developed by aliens to destroy another planet. Dan and Charlie inject white spikes with the toxin reagent, while they are still in eggs. With one shot, each of the monsters turns into a pool of blood after struggling for a while. Before they give the other white spikes a dose, the white spikes become so irritated that they rush out from the containers. As the situation turns complicated, Charlie asks to let him handle the beasts alone. After Dan leaves, Charlie blows up the spacecraft with the bombs he has. Joining forces with Grandpa and Dorian, Dan soon learns that the blast kills all white spikes, except one. To prevent this particular white spike from breeding more descendants, Dan and Grandpa decide to hunt it down and kill it. Shortly after, they track it all the way, and finally succeed in sandwiching the monster. The beast recoils, as they riddle the white spike with countless bullets from its front and back. Unexpectedly, a white mist begins to gather around the white spike. And mysteriously, it vanishes in the mist. For better defense, Dan and Grandpa stand back to back. Out of thin air, the monster emerges from the white fog, disarranging the two men's formation. In the blink of an eye, Dan is shot down by a spiky bullet. As the white spike roams over to him quickly, Dan plucks out the bullet from his leg, and stabs it into the beast's eye. Shortly after that, Grandpa hits its another eye with a pickaxe. The madly blind white spike kicks Grandpa away, and shoots spikes everywhere. Dan seizes this chance to inject the monster's claw with toxin. But to his surprise, the white spike bites off its own claw for survival. As a last resort, Dan climbs to the edge of the cliff, intending to use himself as bait to entice the enemy. But Grandpa cuts his own palm, to lure the white spike with his own blood. Grandpa's sacrifice attempt empowers Dan to ride on the white spike, and cut through its neck, before giving a deadly toxin shot into its brain. Without further ado, Dan kicks the very last white spike down the cliff. In the final scene, Dan and Grandpa reunite with the family. When Dan's daughter hugs him, he feels so accomplished that he has done the right thing. With